Marcus would put up a big chain link fence.
A chain link fence?
Yeah, it looks like it surrounds a huge area.
Huh. That's weird.
Who are they keeping out of here? And why?
Ah, geez, I don't know. Maybe it's biologists, you know? Well, they don't want people traipsing on their precious lichens.
What's a lichen?
Wouldn't you liken to know?
Oh my god, goodbye.
I'll ask next time I talk to someone, but that'll probably be a few days.
Do you think those girls could be behind this fence?
Well, having once been an ornery young woman, the last thing I would do is climb a fence. Especially if I knew I was in trouble.
Hey, remember that guy from yesterday, the guy I saw hiking home?
The sheet thief!
Yeah, that guy.
Go on.
Maybe he was from...
What was it like when you guys found out?
We were scared shitless. We went straight to the doctor after her first spell or whatever. They diagnosed her and we were both just very scared. Can't really tell when Julia is scared. She just gets quiet. She was very quiet. Boy, for as dry as it is this summer, there's an area down here that's lush.
Oh, you must be talking about the Aspen Grove down there.
Yeah, I think that's where I am.
Those trees are Mexico? Is this some sort of riddle?
I just have a nice view to the south. You know, trees and mountains forever.
Well, eventually you'll wander into the area overseen by Chimney Rock Lookout, but that's probably an impossible hike in terms of terrain. It's nice. Look, I called with bad news. 2 young women, Chelsea Stevens and Lily McLean, were reported missing. They've got parents out in California who haven't heard from them in a week. They were supposed to meet an aunt down in Cody. If they're the girls from last week, then you're probably the last person to have seen them.
You should tell whoever that I'm happy to be questioned.
Look, it's not gonna be an issue. I mean, if they turn up dead, then maybe. Should I just not say anything and save us the trouble?
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. All right, Henry, thanks. Enjoy the sunset. But I bet we'll be stuck with her for the rest of the summer. And she doesn't have a name yet. I usually think of something funny or something practical or a little risque when coming up with them. But why don't you do the honors?
Maybe we call it the Flapjack Fire. Can you sell that as a name?
You really like that, huh?
Yeah, I said I did. It's funny.
Fair enough. Flapjack Fire it is. They'll probably ask me if it was a camp cooking accident or something. So there's this creek down the hill, and, you know what my favorite thing to do is?
What's that?
I love to take a bottle of whatever I have on hand, plunge it. You didn't find and eat any mushrooms, did you? I mean, they can be fun, but also, you know, devastating. Regardless, just let me know, okay, buckaroo? Oh, God. I don't know why I just...
I found a walkie-talkie out here, too.
Okay.
It's going shithouse.
Well...
the gameplay and systems programmer on Firewatch.
And I'm James, and I was the animator on Firewatch.
And we're here to talk about climbing and mantling today.
We had a bunch of stuff that essentially was more point-to-point interactive stuff, where you'd sort of like look to the rock you wanted to put your hand on and click on it, and you'd kind of do that. A lot of the platforming-y type stuff just got pared down because as you make the game, you realize what game you're making, and it's not really about being an athletic climbing person. It just kind of like made the game slower when you were trying to get to the next conversation. Mostly what the climbing stuff ended up...
Firewatch?
So we're here to talk a little bit about the time of day system that the game uses and the skybox stuff. You're in an area where there's a weird device that you can use to step and mess around with those while we talk.
As you can see around you right now, you can walk on the different parts there and you'll see the weather changing. So immediately when we started working on Firewatch, there were a couple of important points. We had to have a dynamic time of day. So at any point, people could trigger changing the sky, changing the fog, changing each individual component independently. At the same time, this has all sorts of technical implications, but the most important are, okay, how do we represent all this information? Games have many ways of baking data, which means that you sort of gather the lighting information in a scene and then you save it into memory, which is usually a texture or other data structures, to then use it in real time. Now, the problem with that was that we had a lot of different permutations and we wanted them to change in real time. And also, we didn't know ahead of time how many we were going to have. So we tried to go with a fully dynamic solution. In this case, what dynamic means is just that as you walk around, you'll see the sun moving around, the sky color changing, the fog color changing, and the shadows moving. So all those components are always rendered every frame and there's no information that is stored anywhere.
So what pieces make up the sky again?
The sky, we tried first an approach of representing sort of a simplified version of the scattering equation and seeing what that would look like. And it was looking good in the game, but it was still very difficult to author. And since Ollie, as the art director, is absolutely talented with colors, at some point we just sat down and we sort of worked together and said, okay, imagine that you could just paint the sky in Photoshop and think about how that would work in the game. It might just magically work. And by doing that, we basically dissected his process of assembling just a painted sky in Photoshop, and we created a shader, which are basically programs that run on the GPU to render things, that suited his exact style. So really, the sky is just a series of gradients that blend into each other with a couple of controls to change curves and attenuations between them. So as you walk around, you'll be able to see how both the sky changes and then the fog adapts to the same color and the sun moves in the right direction. And then there were just a couple of numbers to make sure that like the brightness around the sun would be higher so that it would still sort of represent and give the feeling of what the sky and how the sky behaves.
And this like gave Ollie the ability to test some things very quickly.
Exactly. Having immediate feedback for filling a world that was as big as Firewatch, especially for the sort of limited team size that we had, was absolutely important. Like, we had to have a way so that artists would make something quickly, have an idea of what it would look in the game, and knowing that it was pretty close to...
Yeah, there's the amplify color if you're really wanting to make your own Firewatch. And in an area like this Aspen Grove, you can see all those effects coming together. You see...
Hi, Jake.
Hey, Jane. In this garden surrounded by scary mannequins seems like a great place to talk about how you figure out perspective and scale when making a level.
Yeah, so, when you start making a game, one of the first things you need to do is to have scale reference. So, what we did was just download a bunch of free scale models, actually.
Yep, just some royalty-free, T-posed.
Yes.
Pretty weird looking image on it, that is actually what Henry looks like from third person. So you're looking at Henry as we saw him in Unity Editor.
Yeah, Henry is very much sort of an ultimate Cronenberg nightmare. He's got sort of like, we called them the spider bones, where you can stretch his shoulders really far away from his torso. Early on, I remember looking at a GIF with the team of like how Crysis was doing their first-person stuff, and if you looked at it, you could sort of see his spine and neck becoming this mad giraffe creature, and we took that concept and ran with it. So we ended up sort of like almost any animation in the game, if you look at it from outside of the exact angle we want you to, it would completely destroy immersion and you'd be horrified and possibly sick.
That was playing on top of the game at a particular moment.
When you write it, and you would say that, you're sort of like, and you'll figure that out on the page when you're working, when we were trying to really talk about the beats of this last scene, and I would go like, okay. And some direction that you gave me that was really valuable was just the muted nature of this scene, because everything that has been said has already been said, and there's sort of nothing left to do. And you get to a point in your life where that is true often. But movies and games never really explore what that space feels like.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to choose to do that, to write the like not exciting thing, which I think is why the helicopter shows up, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
We needed something to counterbalance this feeling of like, well, the story is just over.
Yeah.
They're not gonna get to see each other because that's just the way it goes. So how do we make this feel big and final? We better pay for a big helicopter and a guy's hand you grab and everything. And then to tie it all together, we decided very, very down to the wire that you were going to write music over the top of the whole thing. And I think it totally works.
Yeah.
But what was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was very stressful because writing that music was literally in the last couple days before content lock. But I think much like the writing of the scene, it just, I think I had just sort of absorbed so much of everything that had led up to that point that it actually ended up being an easier process than I thought it was going to be. As for the ending as a whole, I mean, we talked through how this game was going to end so many times, and on a literal plot level, it actually changed a fair amount in terms of how the mystery gets resolved. All the sort of background information that's feeding into Henry and Delilah's last conversation. And I remember something that was really important to me was like, as much as possible, I would like the ambiguity and the sort of meaning of the ending and of all the events that have transpired to be in like, not in the literal what happened, but in the why did any of it happen? Like just in the sense of why does anything happen? Like I remember that was something that I thought was really potentially powerful about the way this game concluded. I think you got, I don't know if that means anything to anyone else, but I think that you got that in the writing, and it was I was very happy with how it ended up, even though it was a very
thanks so much for like
contentious-
you through the entire process, 2-year process of trying to write this game, were just like a constant like checkpoint for me, because when you're writing, it's a very lonely process. It's very, very lonely, and to drift off of the tone of the thing you're working on with the other people is very seductive. Hey guys, we're doing this totally new different thing. This scene happens a totally different way now because I had a brilliant idea last night.
Yeah, that happened a bunch of times.
Yeah, that like that is a very easy thing to do, but I always felt like you were able to ground me back to where we were headed in a way that I found to be very comforting. And I thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Glad to help. It worked out. I'm really happy with what we did with the ending. For something that so many people like have very mixed feelings about, I almost am like even more pleased we.
Hello? Is anybody there?
Hi. Yeah, it's me. I'm back at the staging area near the trailhead. I think I see your truck.
Red? Colorado plates?
Yeah. It's a piece of shit.
about the secret alternate ending to Firewatch, which, if for anyone who isn't aware of this, if you dilly-dally after the final conversation with Delilah, then the helicopter will just leave without you, and that is fully supported with its own animation content and so on and so forth. If I remember correctly, it was essentially a request from you to me, Jake. Is that how you remember it?
I think that Sean and Chris and I all wanted it to happen. Once we realized the helicopter pilot was there, given that all of Firewatch is sort of, or not all of it, but quite a lot of Firewatch is predicated on the idea that if you don't do anything, that inaction is action. Like if you let a conversation time out, it just times out. It seems ridiculous that a helicopter pilot would wait for a crazy person for this long. So it seemed like a fun and accurate Easter egg to let him just totally abandon you. I don't know. My favorite ending of Firewatch is the one where the helicopter pilot flies away and the player raises their camera at the last second and snaps a picture of the helicopter leaving them behind, because the story in that credit sequence is just totally weird. The Henry that gets left behind, like, is he burned alive? Does he go off and run into the woods and become Ned Goodwin of his own? I don't know.
Tons of weird, quite complex stuff goes in at the very end when you understand the systems, because like building that in terms of the scripting logic was pretty complicated. But it's like I was at my most competent at scripting events, so it just slipped in like half a day near the very, very, very end.
Also, a game development trick that everyone should learn is that if it's the very last thing that happens in the game, it can be as crazy as you want, because that game is unloading itself the moment it's done. Who cares what mess that thing leaves behind? Your game is erased immediately afterwards, so just go nuts.
I'm very pleased we did that.
Yeah, same. That's the end of the Firewatch audio tour. Thank you very much for playing along and listening to all this stuff.
Yay, thank you.
Thanks. But what is Firewatch?
That was it. We did it. That was the whole thing.